Let's get into some free agency talk real quick. So first thing I want to do is I want to go into my list that I've compiled. I think it's fairly accurate. Let's get into now. The guys in red on the left are the guys that I'm not expecting to come back this season. I've erased their value just because, but I kind of tucked it in a different area. Allen Robinson, look, he's an 11-year vet. I don't expect him to be back this year, and if it is, it has to be on a vet minimum just for camp purposes only. Obviously, an unrestricted free agent. He can do whatever he wants. Tim Patrick, right now, I would love to see him come back. I really would. But his projected value is over $4.5 million.
Ooh.
4.5. That's not bad, especially for his production, and where I think he's going to grow this season. We paid we paid Josh Reynolds, was it $6 or $7 million?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get Tim Patrick at $4.5 million, I think that you're winning. Shane Zylstra. Right now, he's a restricted free agent, so the Lions do have a little bit of control, and his projected number is at 1.3. Now, most sites have him at like 990 to 1.1. I bumped him up a couple $100,000. I think that he's going to be in that 1.3, 1.5. Probably wants a multi-year deal, even though he hasn't done anything in his career, really. I'm not so sure that he's going to be back, but if he is, a $1.3 million for a camp body, I'm all for it. Dan Skipper, unrestricted free agent. He's 30 years old, 7 years of experience. Now, his cap is going to, or his salary is going to raise. I think he's going to be closer to $2 million this year than the 1.5 or 1.4 that it's projected to be. He probably deserves it. I mean, Dan's been a pretty consistent guy. He actually made the roster last year, if I remember correctly, for the first time ever.
First time.
I would love to see him come back, but I also think that the Lions are looking to, grow Manu and get him ready. And that is going to be Manu's, position right off the get. Is probably more of that swing tackle, more of that extra lineman, in our bigger packages or goal line. I'm really surprised that last year we did not use Manu at all in any of our goal line opportunities. I mean, you put him in as a tush-push candidate. Hell, put him behind center and give him the ball. Ain't nobody going to take him down. That's what I would do. He would be my secret weapon back there. I think you called him the fridge at one point.
Yeah.
Michael Neese, look, I'm gonna go ahead and highlight him in red. He might be back. But right now, I'm out on Michael Neese. At restricted, an exclusive rights free agent at $1.9 million. I have a problem with that. Morris Norris, for some reason, I think he's coming back right now at 1.2. He's also an exclusive rights free agent. Connor Galvin, I put him in the same boat as Michael Neese. He's probably coming back. I really don't. I'm going to change Michael to. We're going to go orange. He's a little warm. I prefer not, but probably happening. Well, Craig Reynolds, $1.2 million, restricted rights, free agent, probably coming back, entering his 6th year, I believe. 28 years old. I think that he's a very valuable asset to the Lions, but I think he's probably going to test free agency as well. I don't think that the Lions are going to have to really worry a whole lot. Matter of fact, I don't know what the RFA tenders are and what the Lions are going to have to give him. I don't know if you have those up either. Do you, Eric?
No, I don't.
I thought you had the tag information out.
Oh, yeah. Just 1 second. So you want to know a transition?
Restricted free agent tag.
No, this just has the franchise tag and the transition tag.
Oh, yeah, I don't need that.
Because those are for tomorrow. So tomorrow is the deadline for franchise tags and transition tags.
Which I don't think the Lions are going to be using any of those.
Nope.
Okay, so for 2025, right now, the restricted free agent tenders, so an RFA tender, if you were to give him a right of first refusal, you're going to have to pay Craig $3.26 million.
Whew.
That's not happening. I can't imagine that that's happening. So I'm expecting Craig to fully test free agency. He's out. And whether or not he gets something, great. Teddy Bridgewater, the only reason why he's in red is because we know he's going back to coaching. And that's not a negative on him. Zeke Turner, unrestricted free agent, please stay that way. I'm not really worried about him coming back. I'm not a big fan of the way that he played, but something tells me he probably will be back. But this is my early consensus that these are the players that I would probably walk away from, which means we have a lot of holes to fill. Ben Nyman, 7 years of experience. I thought that he played admirably last season. He was, thrown into a tough situation. He got a ton of playing time. I think that this is a guy that you want to bring back. Right now, his projected value is right around 1.1. I'm going to go ahead and bump him up into probably the 1.35 area, or 1.5 area, excuse me. We'll call it 1.4, I guess. I think that he's worth it, and I think that he'll be back. Derek Barnes, 4th season. Unrestricted free agent. He's probably going to test free agency. This is another guy that you'd probably love to have back, but what's up with his injury status? I'm not sure right now. I haven't looked in a while. He'll probably be healthy by camp, I would assume. I don't think there's an issue there. But do the Lions want to get better? Can they keep Derek? Or is this going to turn into a multi-year deal where Derek is probably going to be valued at the $3 million a year range for 3 years? He'll probably get a 3 and 10. 3 over 10. Which, to me, I think that's a little bit much to pay Derek. But then again, I don't really have anything to go off of right now. But I'm going to make him orange, which I'm kind of half in, half out on. Michael Badgley, I mean, he's a kicker. Like, I'm sure we're probably going to bring in another kicker, but I've seen where the Lions have also interviewed some kickers. Might even bring in another rookie. We're right now at $1.5 million. You've got to bring in another kicker no matter what. You have to have camp competition. You have to have someone to keep you guys healthy, your legs healthy. Anthony Pittman, I'm good on. He's entering his 3rd season. He is also restricted free agent. So that $3.26 million right of first refusal, I can't imagine that the Lions are going to pay that when his value is probably in that 1.1, 1.2 area. Trevor Nowaski, you have to keep him. Exclusive rights free agent. And from that perspective, if he's a $1, $2, $1, $3, $1, $5 million a year guy, I think that it's worth it. A lot of these guys are going to get vet minimums. I think the vet minimum is about $990 or something like that. Quan Alexander, obviously, I don't think he'll be back. No explanation needed. All right, Kevin Zeitler. Guy's what, 35 years old this year? What did he get paid last year? Was it $10 million?
6.
Was it 6? I mean, it says 6 on my sheet.
I think it was 6.7. If my crappy old brain remembers things right.
Okay, so yeah, he had a cap hit of 5.94. I mean, we stole him.
Yes.
Well, his value, his market value, according to Spotrac, is 9.2.
I'd probably pay it.
I think it's worth it if you could land in the middle. If you could get him at 7.5, great. Let's do it. Anything above 7.5, I'm out. And that's simply because we have Mahogany and we still have Graham Glasgow. This could mean you bring Kevin in and you get rid of Graham.
Yep.
If you bring Kevin back, I think that Graham is gone. I think that you're probably going to trade him.
That's why I would pay Zeitler 9.
I'd have to look at Graham Glasgow's cap consideration. And we're going to do more of this. We're going to do the exercise where we go through the roster and we kind of create our own. And maybe I'll get it done this week, but I'll explain to you guys why I believe we can't bring in these high-priced free agents. And it's simply just because of the contracts and where it makes sense and where it doesn't. So Graham Glasgow's contract right now in 2025, he is due a base salary of $5.5 million, but he only has a guarantee of $1 million. So this is where the Lions can get out of the contract. If they were to cut him pre-June, the Lions would save about $7.6 million, and they would also lose about $9 million. So it's almost a wash. It's almost a wash. If they were to trade him pre-June, they would save we'll call it 8.8. They would assume dead cap of 4, 5, 6, about 6.2. So a trade makes more sense. Now, obviously, next year is the major out in 2026. There's no guaranteed money left on his deal. He has a cap hit of 8.4 in 2026. His total cap hit this year is 7.4. So Kevin versus Graham, I think it's Kevin. I also feel that Graham did not play well on the left side, so I think that's an issue. If you are bringing back Kevin Zeitler this year, then what are you doing with Graham? Because he did not play well on the left side. The year before, he was awesome. He played all 3 positions, left and right guard, center, had great grades, great games at all 3 positions. Something was up this last season. What do you think about Graham versus Zeitler? I know you said bring in Zeitler, but if we do bring back Zeitler, what does that do for Graham?
Well, that makes him either trade bait or a post-June 1st cut. And I hate to say it, but there might have been something wrong with Graham last year. He did not look right all year. He had a defeated look on his face when you would see him pregame in warmups, and which was kind of different because the year before he always had this big smile, ready to go look on his face. And like walking into the locker room at halftime, you saw it, the head down, oh man, I'm not having my best kind of game kind of look. And I was really looking at that kind of stuff this year because he really did have a down year this year.
So what you're saying is the body language has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. And, this is a business. Brad Holmes, this is kind of like Build-A-Bear for the roster.
Build-A-Bear.
You gotta build your roster. You can't put sparkly googly eyes all over your Build-A-Bear.
You could.
You could, but then it's not going to look very good, not going to perform well. So you have to make some hard decisions sometimes. Sometimes you got to put normal eyes on your Build-A-Bear. And this is one of those times where he's a fan favorite. He's a former Michigan player. He's played with us twice. He was drafted here. This is one of the ones that, might hurt some fans' feelings, but you have to take the feeling component completely out of it. You have to look at the production on the field and what their salary is worth.
So I'm putting some information here on the bottom of the sheet that you guys can't see yet. So I'm going to put a cut section in now. I'm adding it. So his previous was about 2.7 last year. This year, he's looking at about 7.4. My note for this guy is post-June cut. So if you do a post-June 1 cut, the Lions will save $13 million, and they will have a dead cap of about 5.4 million-ish, which isn't bad. So you're saving, $8 million roughly by cutting him post-June 1. He's 33 years old, 9 years of experience. I think that Graham is out, honestly.
Yeah, if you're saving $8 million, slap another $1 million on there. There you got Zeitler for another year.
If that's what it's going to cost to keep him. All right, I'm going to put Zeitler as, we'll go orange. So slightly warm on Zeitler here. Slightly warm on Derek Barnes coming back. It's got to make sense. I think Connor Galvin, again, Michael Neese, they're probably going to come back just as depth in the very beginning. All right, let's get into Coyote Iwasaka. Again, a restricted free agent. Oh, I didn't put him in blue. Let's make him blue real quick. He's a restricted rights free agent. Again, if you're looking at, a number for that, it's $3.26 million. There ain't no way in heck you're slapping this on him and expecting that kind of money to be paid to him. I'm not high on Coyote Iwasaka. I know he played, decent in the NFC Championship game in 23, but since then he's been largely ineffective, ill-utilized, kind of a camp body. Look, if he comes back for, vet minimum or something for this year, great. But right now I'm not in the boat with this dude just yet. Appreciate his service, though, of course. Levi, so this is the big one for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Lions kind of evaded a tragic set of events. Levi suffers a major back injury. I believe it happened in college, and then it gets worse in his first season as a Detroit Lion. He undergoes back surgery, clearly has kicked butt, taken names, gotten himself back onto the field. I thought he had a great 2024. But man, are you willing to continue to roll the dice that you just got lucky on, and it took 4 seasons for this guy to finally make the field? That's my biggest question. Are you willing to pay this guy a 3-year, over $15 million deal right now? Or more? What do you think?
That's a lot of money. And on the other side of the coin, do you let him walk and go with Aaron Glenn to the Jets?
Well, I mean, he might. I mean, I have no idea if that's where he'll end up, but I think that people are going to want to be smart. I mean, you just evaded a huge issue. So his value right now, I've got him at $7.9 million. That's my value on Levi. So I'm sorry, I said 3 over 15, 2 over 15 is what I'm expecting Levi to get. So about $8 million a year. I'm sorry. I think Brad has to be smarter here. You evaded a major disaster. You only got 1 year's worth of work out of this guy on his rookie contract. I think, I love the grit glory days, right? I love the grit guys. I love the guys that identifies the culture in the team, in the locker room. Look, I appreciate it all. But the business is the business, and I'm sorry, I think Levi's going to get the business end. I think he is. Because I'd rather see a guy like Kyle Picot come back. A guy that has had a pretty decent career. And I think that he played fairly well last season until he got injured. He was a big part of the reason why this defensive line was playing well, throughout the summer and preseason, early into the season. Kyle was playing great. When I watched him at training camp, man, I couldn't believe how good he was for somebody that I didn't really know. Or might have been a little after training camp. His value is all over the place. Matter of fact, his value for OTC says $0, which obviously doesn't make sense. If I do a little bit of work here and kind of go and compare him to some other players, the value that I come up with is He's entering what, 10th season, 9th season. I think he's probably going to command a 2-year deal at $7 million. We'll go 3.5. I'd rather see this come back than Levi. Now I know he's a little bit older, but we're talking a vet, someone that can stick to this roster for this season. Get yourself an out in 2026, and bring him back in. Any thoughts on Kyle Peko?
He was great while he was in, and then got injured, and off he went. Do you remember what his injury was? I don't. Was it a pec?
Pec with a Peko? I thought it was a knee.
Or was it a knee? Just depends on what the injury was.
No, it was a pec. It was a pec, a torn pec.
Thought he torn a pec.
And that was week 6 though, so he should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, he should be fine. Look, if you can get him for $3.5 million for 1 season or better, great. If you can get him for 2 at 7, wonderful. Because the next guy, Marcus Davenport, I know there's a lot of mixed feelings on him. Eric, I'll just ask you first. What do you think?
Right away, Marcus Davenport, bring him back for depth. When he was in for the limited time we got to see him for 2 games, 3 games, he was a great can crusher. He had a half a sack, and he was getting there, and he was keeping contained better than Aiden Hutchinson was.
That's a fact.
The quarterbacks were not running around his end and getting away from him, and he was out there when Kyle Murray was playing.
Kyler Murray, yeah. Yep. He was having a good game. I mean, it was so much so that Paris Johnson was so pissed he decided to do what he did to his arm. And look, I think that it's $6.5 million APY what he got last year. It's too much. It's definitely too much. So I'm not, I wouldn't be in the boat of paying him that kind of money.
No, it's going to have to be a 1-year absolute prove it deal. Maybe even vet minimum.
Nah, I probably wouldn't go vet minimum, but here's what I would say. Again, I'm going to put him kind of between where he was and where I feel that he should be. So last year he was 1 year, I think it was 6.5. Here, let me pull it up. He got paid a base of 1.2. He had a signing bonus of 2.3. He had a cap hit of 3.5. And if the Lions let him go, he had a dead cap of 4.6.
He had a lot of incentives on playing time built into his structure as well.
Yeah, so here's what I would do. Now, Spotrac and OTC are way different on valuations here. I don't know why they're so different. But, I mean, it's even as far as what the contract was. But here's what I would say. I would say you give him $2.5 to $3 million guaranteed. We'll go 2.5 guaranteed. But then you're going to give him a bunch of incentives to earn up to $5 million. And you bring him back for that 1 season. You give him a fully guaranteed $2.5 million deal. You bring him back on a 1-year deal with $2.5 million extra in incentives. That means games played. You get an extra $50,000 or $100,000, whatever it is, $150,000 per game played. Every sack you get $50,000, or maybe in 75, whatever the number is. Every tackle you get $10,000. I don't know. I haven't seen a contract, with all the incentives built in. I would love to see one of these contracts. I wonder if a former NFL player is allowed to share those things. But last year at $6.5 million or whatever, whatever he was supposed to get paid, probably didn't happen. And I'm expecting this year that his market value is probably going to be in that 2.2 to 3.3 area. And that's why I'm saying give him 2.5 guaranteed, bring him in. I'm warm on Marcus coming back. I think that, like you do, incentive laden makes sense, but I think that experience, depth, not a starter. I'd rather see Marcus come in and have to work for everything, stay healthy. We need a young buck on this roster. So Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, Landon Jackson, I think that wherever you land one of those guys, they would probably work into being the day 1 starter. John Kaminsky, I know this one's a heart puller, man, a string puller. What do you think about John?
It's unfortunate that he was injured for all of last season, but that's part of why this needs to be a business decision. And I'm sorry, I think his time with the Detroit Lions has ended.
I'm with you. I think that he's one of those glue guys. I think he's exactly what the Lions wanted, an interior defensive lineman. Now let's make sure we identify the difference here. Kaminsky is an interior defensive lineman. 6'5", 286 pounds. He was just so happened to be able to play on the outside as well. He was a little bit more of a hybrid. And I think that, you'd love to see him perform. And the way he did the first year, man, you couldn't have asked for anything more out of the guy. But I think at $2.5 million to $3.5 million market value right now, and he just hasn't produced, I think the exercise is over. I think that you have to move forward. So I think that John Kaminsky is out. What about Al-Quddin Muhammad?
Now, this guy, if you can get him on a cheap deal, great rotational piece. But to ask him to be a starter again, no way.
I thought I saw some bright lights from him at times. I don't think the moment was ever too big for him. I think that he has a lot left in the tank. I mean, he is entering his 8th or his 9th season this year, pushing 30 years old. But if I were to take a guy over a guy, I would take Al-Quddin Muhammad over John Kaminsky. And as far as a market cap perspective, I've seen numbers between $2.5 million on Spotrac all the way down to $1.6 million on OTC. I'll probably go right in the middle. We'll just call it 2.1. If you give him a fully guaranteed vet minimum, let's just say 1 million, 1 million guaranteed, 2.1 million, is the ceiling, then yeah, I'm warm on bringing him back. Pat O'Connor, he's coming back. I don't think that there's any way that he can't come back. This guy was a huge surprise. Like Brad Holmes said, I mean, you just don't expect that you bring a guy like this in the summer and then he has the season that he has and having to fill in the way that he did, totally unexpected. He worked his butt off. I mean, he's clearly a vet for a reason. 8 years in the NFL is a long time. I think that Pat O'Connor comes back. I think he's also going to get a lot of action in free agency.
Yeah, with Brad going out of his way to mention him when he didn't need to, that tells me he's coming back.
So we just don't have a deal on him yet that I know of. His valuation, again, there's varying degrees all over the place of what he's worth. For instance, OTC has him at 1.125, which pretty much vet minimum, right, for his age in the NFL. Spotrac doesn't have a value built in, but looking at his history, I would say, look, 1.75 million, I think that is doable. Now, my numbers are a little bit inflated, on some of these guys. I'm adding like an extra 250 to 350K on each guy because the cap has gone up. And look, if the Lions need to spend an extra $2 to $3 million spread out over 5, 6, 7 guys, just to make sure that there's a little bit of a sweetener in there, then I think it's well worth it. So Pat, I want to see him come back. How about Jonah Williams?
Undecided. He'd be a up in the air guy. He did well for the limited amount of time that he got to play with us. We picked him up off the Rams practice squad.
Yeah,
played in 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, I know he got some snaps. I can't remember exactly how many.
Yeah, just I didn't get enough of a sample size to say yes or no really with him. So for me, I guess I'd have to say no.
So young guy, right? He's only entering his 4th or 5th season in the NFL. I did think that, in the limited amount of time that he did get in, I think that he showed some brilliance at times. I also thought that he showed that he wasn't with the team during the summer. So this is a guy that if you bring in for, training camp and he's got an entire year to work with you since OTAs, I think that he has a higher ceiling. And the fact that he's been in a good, on a good team already with the Rams and developing, I think that's exactly why Brad, went after him, because he has history with him. I think that Jonah's coming back. And I think that would be a very wise move. I'm not so sure that he's going to get a ton of action in free agency. The Rams are probably going to want him to come back. I think that they're definitely going to be in the boat of trying to bring him back. But I want to see Jonah back in, and that's why I would give him a little bit of a sweetener at $1.5 million a season, whether that's 1 season or 2 seasons or whatever they do. Miles Adams, same thing, but he's also a restricted rights free agent. And $3.26 million is way too much to pay if you have to tender him, right? And then when I say tender, that's only so somebody else can't deal with him. Let me be clear. If you put a restricted, right of first refusal tag on somebody, that means that you're willing to pay that player $3.26 million or whatever the number is, and that no other team can now enter into a contract. But if they do, they have to beat that number. And then if they beat that number, I think that you get some sort of compensation later. The whole comp game that the Lions have not done a very good job. This is where the Lions could play the comp game quite well this year. And a lot of these ERFAs and RFAs are probably going to disappear. And I'm not sure the exact formula, but that would mean that the Lions could possibly get some more comp picks next year, which we desperately need. Jonah, I want to see back. Miles Adams, what do you think?
Kind of feel the same as I do with Jonah Williams. Lower end of the roster type guy. Doesn't swing me one way or the other real hard.
So for me on Miles, I did like his ability. I mean, he's kind of an in-betweener. right? He's 6'2", 285 pounds. 27 years old, so he's still young. Doesn't have a ton of snaps on his body. So he's relatively healthy. 3 years, entering his 4th year, I believe. Value on this guy is vet minimum. I think you've got to bring him back. Again, I know I'm inflating these numbers, but I'm doing it for a reason. $1.5 million. I think it makes a ton of sense to bring him back. If he gets a ton of action in free agency, obviously you're probably going to let him go. What about Mitchell Agood or Goody?
Homegrown Lions guy. They want him back.
I think so too.
They want to see if they can keep molding this kid into what they want. I think the trial of turning him and Houston into Sam linebackers wasn't the greatest experiment in the world. So let's just keep him as an edge defender and stop trying to make him do more than what he was.
Yeah, I think that's a great position to have with both those guys. I'll finish doing my color coding later. But all right, next up, Carlton Davis. Right now, I've seen valuations on Carlton Davis in that $13.8 million range. Now, last year, Carlton was paid. This just doesn't make any sense that this can't be right. Let's take a look here. Carlton Davis. So it says last year that he was paid a $1.25 million base, a $3.27 million signing. He had a cap hit of $4.5 million and a dead cap of $13.097 million because the Lions threw in 3 void years at $3.27 million each year, which attributed to $9.823 million that they kicked down the road, which I think when you add all that together is that, $14.5 million salary.
Mm-hmm.
And this year he's projected to get anywhere between 12 and 15 million again. Carlton Davis, in my opinion, he's not coming back. And he's not coming back because I think it's going to be too rich for the Lions. And there's another team that is going to want him even more.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think before I spit out who I think where he's going?
I think there's going to be multiple teams trying to get this guy from us because a broken jaw is so fluky.
Yeah.
And I know didn't he miss 1 or 2 games for something else during the year, a knee or something? And then he came back. Yeah, he had a knee and then he came back. He was pretty durable this year until he broke the jaw.
Yeah, he was.
That is so fluky. All these broken bones. I don't know where all these broken bones come from. I'm going to say this right now. Whoever the trainer is for the Detroit Lions, you guys better be putting out cartons of milk all summer long for these guys.
Yeah.
Let's get these bionic bones going. Just the flukiest of fluky injuries, a broken jaw. I can't tell you the last time a player for the Detroit Lions had a broken jaw. It's been a while. And other than that, his play on the field was fantastic. He was lights out. There was, didn't he get Defensive Player of the Week 1 week for the NFC?
I think so.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Look, he had a great year. I really think that, when we compare players, when we look at, where they started and what we think that they were supposed to be doing or how they were supposed to be performing, I think he overperformed what we had expected or what a lot of people were saying about him, that he was oft injured. He misses on average 23% of games every year, which is a number that I put together, which is highly accurate. And again, when I compare that to other players like Marcus Davenport or, other, players that, people say he's oft injured, can't have him back on the squad, doesn't make any sense. Well, I mean, Carlton missed 23% of the games again, but he did overperform to what I thought that he was going to do this season. He was having a great season. I think that he would love to come back to play on this team again, but I also think that he's about his money. And he doesn't have forever left in the league. He's probably looking for, and could get a 3-year deal from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
If the Lions wanted to lock him up for the next 2 to 3 seasons, you're looking at probably 3 over 36 is my valuation on him. So you have a down escalator. You probably pay him about 10 million this year. It would probably balloon up to 18 million next year. And low guaranteed money in year 2, so you could have an out, but he's not going to like that. So you're probably not going to get the out until year 3. So I think at a minimum, you'd probably be invested in 2 seasons at probably 20 million on average APY, and that's what he would get at a minimum. That might just be too rich for the Lions. Look, the Lions cannot go into the season without another proven vet, but I think that Amik Robertson and the way that he played this last season showed us a little bit different side of him that some of us knew existed in him, but maybe even more so that gives us some hope that he could play on the outside if required to, if Ennis Rakestraw is not ready, or if the Lions don't find another capable vet, or if they don't bring in another rookie that can play up to that standard. So Carlton, though, is going to get a lot of action. And what's being said right now is that the Jacksonville Jaguars are in hot pursuit of Davis. And it makes sense. I mean, they definitely need the help. And Jacksonville's looking at not only gauging the market, but they're also looking at a multi-year deal from the rumors that have already been spread. And we're just a week away from finding out. Like next Monday, it's going to be like, I'll be in this chair all day. There are some options, though. I mean, the Lions do have some options as far as who they could bring in, and we'll highlight some of those options next. Now, I don't think it's Darius Slay. No, it's not J.C. Horn. Deron Bland. I mean, that would be great. But then again, how much are you willing to pay? Greg Newsome from the Browns? I mean, just throwing out some names, maybe. But there's some opportunity that still lies in the NFL for another good possible shutdown corner in place of Carlton Davis. I have Carlton as red because I don't think that he's coming back, but I'm going to put him as orange. So I'm warm on the idea. I wouldn't be afraid of going 2 over 25, 12.5 million. That's what I would do for Carlton. I would do 2 over 25 and somehow have an out. That still gives him another opportunity to get one more deal before his 10th season, which is kind of that deciding factor, right? If you win a Super Bowl with the guy, he'll still hold some value at age 30. Emmanuel Mosley, no way. I don't even want to discuss it.
Practice squad.
Nope. I don't even want him sniffing the bench. I don't even want him, cleaning jerseys.
I think that experiment has come and gone and ran its course.
Yep. All right, Khalil Dorsey.
Wouldn't mind him back. He was a special teams ace, kick returner / little bit of everything. Just depends on how that leg healed up. Is he, like Aiden? He actually looked like he was on a quicker pace than Aiden was.
Yeah. So quick shout out to J-Rod. He wanted to know how CD3 broke his jaw. It was helmet to helmet, not called on the field again, but it was like helmet to jaw, helmet to helmet. You know what I mean? Like the helmet was kind of like off. It's kind of like face mask jaw at the same time. That's how it got broke.
Yeah.
And he entered concussion protocol at the same time. Obviously was in a lot of pain, and then found out that the jaw was completely just obliterated. Now he was talking good, on that podcast the other day, so his jaw seems to be healed up. He's good to go.
Yeah, Mike P. You say, Eric, my friend, the trainer can't train not to break bones any more than train not to have 23 on injured reserve. Correct. And that's what I was making fun of. Sorry, my sarcasm didn't come through on that one. There has been so many people that said, oh, we need a new training staff. We need to look at our training staff. You can't help broken bones. I don't know what else to do. Yeah. That's why I said they need to put milk out at everything. They don't get water or Gatorade. They get milk when they come off the field.
Or at least take some calcium pills or something, some vitamin D. All right, so Khalil Dorsey, look, I think that there's a better opportunity for him coming back than not.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's been, just fine. And for what purpose, that he does serve on this team. He's good depth. He knows the system. Now, Kindle Vildor, I think that door is closed. I'm obviously out on Kindle.
As am I.
I thought that, it was a good run back for him, this last season where we were hoping not to really see him on the field. But if we did see him on the field, it would have been from a perspective of great depth and situational things where, maybe some guys are getting a rest or something, or, you had a 1 week injury and you had to fill in. But having to rely on Kindle Vildor for a longer period of time, throughout the season, I think is not panned out the greatest. I still believe in his ability. And I think that what he did in Detroit was just fine as far as what he was paid to do and the services he provided. I mean, the first season, you can't blame him. He was in the same situation. I mean, everybody was injured. And, you've also got a defense that was just not that great that season, especially in the back end. And you can't blame what happened in 2023 just on Kindle. I mean, that stuff is just so freaky. It just doesn't happen. And then last year, same thing. I guess I'm wishy-washy on this, but he was put in a situation that was as bad as it gets. Nobody's healthy. Your team is missing more than half of its starters on defense. You're not expected to win ball games, and you're definitely not expected to play at an elite level when there's so many, kinks in the armor, so to speak, up and down, every positional group. So I think he did admirable for what he was expected to do, but I'm not paying the dude almost $3 million a year based on the valuations right now that are coming out. Last but not least, Iffy Melifonwu.
I would like to see Iffy come back. That's just my personal opinion. You drafted him, you groomed him, you made him into a semi-decent safety, and then he was oft injured. He breaks a fingernail and doesn't want to play. It works his way back onto the roster, goes out in pre-games, and has to go back on the injured reserve again. So he spent most of his season on the injured reserve. But when he was in and did play, he played pretty darn good. But if you could just go back one season, he played really well. And he's great against the run, and he picks off some balls once in a while. I mean, he did it against the Vikings and won a game for us. So I don't really want to get rid of the guy, but it all circles around what happens with Kirby Joseph.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest X factor right now, which obviously we're about a week away from finding out on whether or not, there's going to be some trade options for the Lions. And if Kirby is on that list. Now, again, let me put out the public service announcement and be very clear. I don't want Kirby to have to go anywhere, but I think that, when you look at the probability of paying him a max contract and then having to turn around the next season and extend Brian Branch, it just doesn't happen. There's not one team in the NFL right now that has two high-paid safeties on the same roster. You might have one max deal, and then the next highest deal is, $4 or $5 million per year in the safety room. And so even paying $23 million on a safety room, that's a bunch of money. It's like, 1/10, 12th, 1/13 of the cap number, whatever it is, whatever that number breaks out to be. That's a lot of money, especially when you look at next season. Jared Goff's contract is $70 million. You've got Aiden Hutchinson to pay. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs to pay. You've got Sam Laporta. I can't imagine they're going to walk away from Sam. You've got Jack Campbell that's going to be due. So it's a numbers game, and it's a vicious business. His value is worth more now than ever. If you could take, let me finish this, and then I'll talk about him a little bit more. Ifeatu Melifonwu, I would say this. I don't like the $2.5 million valuation, but at the same time, I don't think that we're going to find a better deal on the market for someone that has some pretty decent skill. He's got to stay healthy. You can't have this ticky-tacky stuff keeping him off the field. If you can get him back at a cheaper deal, great. $2.5 million a year, is probably the most I'm going to want to pay. He's probably going to get some heavy action. So he's going to go from blue to orange. He's probably going to get some heavy action. And this all depends on what happens here in free agency. Okay, so that's the free agent talk of the day. The more on Kirby here. To me, it's simple. To a degree, it's never simple, really, but to a degree, it's how do you pay everybody, number one? You can't. How do you go into 2025 with as good of a DB room as you did in 2024? Obviously, there's a lot of injuries that didn't help out the situation. But if Carlton's gone, and you bring in a lower priced free agent or another rookie, then great. You could probably pay Kirby. And you wouldn't have to worry about it. But what if this happened? Okay, what if you traded Kirby somewhere, wherever it is, and you get, say you get a second round pick, and maybe you get a fourth round pick, and maybe you send away a third round pick. I don't know what the numbers are right now. I'm just taking a guess. You get a second and a fourth, and you send away a late third. You get an early second and a fourth, and you send away a late third. And then you take that second round pick, and you've got number 60 already, and you've got 28, and now you're able to get, your Shamar Stewart, your Landon Jackson. What if you snag Nick Amenawari?
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? And so now you've got a really, unproven, but a really good safety coming out of college that has elite size, elite agility, played extremely well last season, but you already have Brian. So you know that the safety room is solid. And you stack a rookie like that back there, he could be, one of the best players out of the draft, especially in this defense, which is going to return a lot of healthy players. So it's not so much that I want to get rid of Kirby at all. He's exactly what we want. But if you have an opportunity to take a pick like that and go out and get one of the most elite safeties obviously I haven't seen anybody with that kind of size and that ability ever. It's been a long time.